If you looked at the young people's profiles who do take their lives, you will see that many of them have self-harm. And when you are worried about whether a young person may take their life, one of the risk factors will be whether or not they have tried to take their life, or indeed whether they have self-harmed. So in that way there is a correlation. But I come across repeatedly staff who are very frightened that a young person is going to kill themselves because of self-injurious behaviours. I also think it's interesting the amount of self-injurious behaviours and the way they have increased and the way they present themselves. And as I said, I've probably been working with both children and adults who present with self-injurious behaviours since 1982. So, and I've seen a massive shift. And when I was first writing for Young Minds about why people and young people self-harmed in around 2000, I would say it was a coping mechanism. I would say things like, well, it's often secretive. I would be talking about the kinds of research that indicated that there was a correlation between sexual abuse and the presentation of self-injurious behaviour, particularly if it was secretive. But it's changed. That is still the case for a minority. The landscape has changed, and yet we're not changing with it. We are still producing literature that is saying the same sorts of things. We are not listening to the voice of young people. That's because, quite often, I run workshops on the unspoken voice of young people. That actually, children find it very difficult to talk, don't they? We endlessly provide talking therapies, but they find it really difficult to speak. We have used our external landscape, our bodies, as a way of communicating things for many, many centuries. Our tattoos, cuts, scars. And yet what we're not getting is that actually the amount of self-injurious behaviour that we're seeing is a message. And it is a collective message from young people. They are inadvertently, I don't think they get up in the morning and say, oh, I'm going to scratch myself because I want to give these adults a message. Because it doesn't work like that, does it? Consciousness, historically, doesn't evolve like that. It has changed for many, many centuries. But there is collective and community consciousnesses. Whatever your religion, whatever your spirituality, whatever your politics, there is a sense of consciousness which we all engage in. It's called and shapes our personality. So what is all this cutting about and all this scratching about? It's so common, and I'm not ruling out the minority that it is around significant trauma, because it is, and the worse it gets, and the longer it goes on, there is definitely a link between trauma and how trauma gets trapped in our bodies. And again, there's that, it gets trapped in our bodies. We have usefully or unusefully separated out mental and physical health services. And yet what we need to do is to create that duality, to bring that duality back. And if you're working with young people who self-harm or are talking about killing themselves, them actually recognising that actually looking after their physical well-being will impact their mental well-being is really, really important. So that collective scratching is a message to us all that I'd like you to leave here today realising, if you don't already realise it, that they're telling us we don't know how to manage our feelings. We haven't got a vocabulary, so we're using our bodies. We haven't got a vocabulary anymore. We are overstimulated, we are using the cognitive part of our brain, and the middle part of our brain is not being developed. That's the bit all the emotions go on. They're all fancy words that I can't pronounce them all. And the old part of the brain, the third house as it were, is in complete contradiction with the new house, the cognitive part. And we're frightened. And when we're frightened, and we have all those physical sensations in our bodies, we don't know what to do. But cutting stops those physical sensations.